A billionaire confined to a wheelchair believed nothing in the world could cure him, until a poor boy appeared before him with an impossible promise. Between arrogance and innocence, an encounter emerged that would change everything forever. Secrets came to light, tears fell, and this man's life would never be the same. A story of faith, transformation, and redemption that will deeply touch your heart. Subscribe to the channel, leave your like on this video, and comment where you're watching from. Sometimes, the greatest wealth is hidden in the most unlikely places, and the greatest lessons come from voices we least expect to hear. The valley between Manhattan's skyscrapers seemed even deeper that autumn morning. Golden leaves danced around hurried pedestrians, while the sun struggled to touch the asphalt between the shadows of concrete giants. On the 78th floor of the Armstrong building, a man contemplated the world through a wall-sized window. His hands rested on the wheels of his chair, motionless like his expression. 5 years ago, Robert Armstrong walked those same streets like a titan. Now, he watched life happen below like someone watching a silent movie to which he no longer belonged. More reports, Mr. Armstrong. The secretary's voice barely penetrated his thoughts.
He didn't turn around.
He just extended his hand and felt the weight of the paper. Another report, another confirmation of what he already knew. His condition was irreversible. $10 million spent on the world's best specialists. For what? To hear different accents pronouncing the same sentence. Cancel my appointments today, he ordered, crumpling the paper without even looking at it. All of them, the woman hesitated for a moment, including the meeting with the board about the acquisition of— I said all, he interrupted, finally turning the chair to face her. Or do I need to speak in another language to be understood? The secretary swallowed hard and nodded, withdrawing quickly. When the door closed, Robert returned to staring at the city. His city. A kingdom he had conquered through relentless ambition and decisions other men wouldn't have the courage to make. Now the only decision that mattered was beyond his reach. Walking again. What he didn't know was that at that very moment, miles away in the Bronx, an 8-year-old boy named Gabriel was closing his eyes before a small makeshift altar in the corner of a cramped apartment, whispering a prayer that would forever change both their lives. The morning began like all others in the small Bronx apartment. The alarm didn't ring. It never did, as it was broken. But Gabriel woke up at exactly 5:43 a.m. as he did every day. The boy opened his eyes in the dim room he shared with his mother, Sophia, and his younger brother, Lucas. Lying on the mattress on the floor, he could see his mother's breathing forming small clouds in the cold autumn air that penetrated through the poorly sealed window cracks. Gabriel got up without making a sound. His small feet knew every creaking board, every obstacle on the way to the tiny kitchen. At 8 years old, he already had the responsibility of preparing breakfast for the family. Sophia worked 2 jobs, cleaning lady during the day and gas station attendant at night. In recent months, since Lucas had gotten sick, she barely slept 4 hours. The boy put on the worn hoodie he used as a coat, 3 sizes too big, a donation from the church, and put water on to boil. While waiting, he knelt in the small space between the stove and the refrigerator, before an image of St. Lazarus, the saint of impossible cures. Good morning, St. Lazarus, he whispered, like greeting an old friend. Lucas slept all night without coughing. Thank you for that. Gabriel didn't pray like other children. He didn't ask for toys or candy. His prayers were intimate conversations, daily reports, and requests for strength. That morning, however, something different happened. While kneeling, a clear image formed in his mind. A man in a wheelchair, inside a huge office, overlooking the entire city. The man was crying, though, trying to hide the tears. The boy blinked, confused. He had never had such a vivid vision before. He felt a tingling in his hands and a strange warmth in his chest. Without fully understanding what was happening, he knew in that instant that he needed to find that man. Gabriel? Sophia's sleepy voice interrupted his thoughts. You woke up early again, son. He stood up quickly. I made coffee, Mom, and there's some bread from yesterday. Sophia smiled with tenderness and exhaustion. At 32, her face already showed the marks of a lifetime of struggles. Widowed 3 years ago when her husband died in a construction accident, she held the world on her shoulders to raise her 2 children. Today is Saturday, Gabriel. You could sleep more. I like waking up early, the boy replied, serving a cup of coffee to his mother. I have more time to help. Sophia kissed her son's forehead. What would I do without you, my little man? Gabriel smiled, but his thoughts remained on the image of the man in the wheelchair. While his mother drank coffee, he gathered courage and said, Mom, I need to go to the city today. Sophia frowned. To the city? Manhattan, why? There's someone who needs help there, the mother sighed. Gabriel, we've talked about this. I know you want to help everyone, but it's different this time. the boy interrupted, with a seriousness that didn't match his age. "I saw, Mom. Like when I saw that Mr. Peterson was going to fall down the stairs, remember? Or when I knew Mrs. Martinez had something wrong with her heart before even the doctors." Sophia fell silent. It wasn't the first time Gabriel had these hunches. At first, she thought it was just childhood imagination, but after some hard-to-explain coincidences, she began to pay more attention. The boy seemed to have a special sensitivity, an ability to perceive things others couldn't. "Who needs help this time?" Gabriel hesitated. "A man in a wheelchair. He's very rich, lives in a tall building." "He's very sad," Sophia shook her head. "And how do you plan to find this man in Manhattan?" "It's a huge city, son. I know where he is," he replied with conviction. "I can feel it." The mother looked at the clock. She needed to go to work in an hour, and Lucas was still sleeping. She had no one to leave the boys with. "I can't let you go alone, Gabriel. Mrs. Ramirez can stay with Lucas. She always helps when you need to work on weekends." Sophia bit her lip, undecided. Gabriel had never asked for something like this before. There was a strange urgency in his brown eyes that intrigued her. "Please, Mom. It's important." After a few minutes of silence, Sophia nodded. "I'll call Mrs. Ramirez. If she can stay with Lucas, I'll take you to the subway. But you go straight there and come back before nightfall, understood? And take the old cell phone with me. It has little battery, but it's enough for one call if you need it." Gabriel smiled, radiant. "Thank you, Mom. I promise I'll be back soon." While Sophia called the neighbor, Gabriel returned to the small altar and gave thanks. Something told him that day would change everything. For him, for his family, and for the man in the wheelchair he had yet to meet. The security guard at Armstrong Tower observed with suspicion the boy who had been standing across the street for over an hour. Small, thin, clothes too simple for that neighborhood. Probably a beggar, he thought. But there was something strange. The kid didn't approach anyone, just stared fixedly at the building, as if waiting for something. Kevin, the security guard, decided to cross the street to check. In his 15 years working for Robert Armstrong, he had learned to be cautious about any unusual behavior. His boss had many enemies. "Hey, kid," he called, stopping a few steps from Gabriel. "What are you doing here?" Gabriel looked at the tall, stocky man without showing fear. "I need to speak with Mr. Armstrong." Kevin almost laughed. "Mr. Armstrong? And why would he speak with you?" "Because I can help him walk again." The security guard was speechless for a moment. How did that boy know about Armstrong's condition? Of course, the accident had been news years ago, but a child this age... "Look, kid, go play somewhere else. Mr. Armstrong is a very busy man." "I'll wait," Gabriel replied simply. "He'll want to see me." Something in the certainty with which the boy spoke made Kevin uncomfortable. He decided to report the incident by radio. To his surprise, after informing internal security, he received orders to bring the boy up. "What's your name?" he asked, still suspicious. "Gabriel." "Well, Gabriel, seems like you're lucky. Come on, but stay close to me and don't touch anything." The boy nodded and followed the security guard through the glass and marble revolving doors. His eyes widened as he entered the monumental lobby. He had never seen so much luxury in one place. The ceiling seemed to touch the sky, and the marble floor reflected his own face like a mirror. "It's like a cathedral," he whispered to himself. The private elevator rose so fast that Gabriel felt his stomach turn. When the doors opened on the 78th floor, he was led down a silent corridor to an anteroom where a woman with a stern expression examined him from head to toe. "Has Mr. Armstrong been informed?" she asked Kevin. "Yes, Mrs. Lawson. He asked to bring the boy up." The secretary stood up with an irritated sigh. "I'll announce him. Wait here." When she disappeared through a dark wooden door, Kevin leaned down to Gabriel. "Whatever you're planning, kid, give up. Mr. Armstrong is not a patient man." Gabriel just smiled. "Don't worry. I'm here to help." The door opened again and the secretary reappeared. "He'll see you." "Alone," she added, looking at Kevin, who seemed surprised. "Are you sure?" "Direct orders." Gabriel walked toward the door, feeling his heart accelerate. Before entering, he turned to Kevin. "Everything will be fine," he said, as if he were the one who needed to reassure the adult. The office was even more impressive than the lobby. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed all of Manhattan like a living model. On the opposite wall, diplomas, certificates, and photographs with famous personalities. In the center, a solid wood desk as large as the apartment where Gabriel lived, and behind it, exactly as in his vision, was Robert Armstrong. Reality, however, was more impactful than the mental image. The man in the wheelchair was imposing, even seated. Striking features, perfectly trimmed gray hair, a suit that certainly cost more than everything Gabriel had ever owned in his life. But his eyes were empty, like windows of an abandoned house. "So you're the miracle boy," Armstrong said. his deep voice filling the room. "It wasn't a question. My name is Gabriel, sir. And you say you can cure me." The sarcasm was evident. "Interesting. Do you know how many charlatans have already tried?" Gabriel didn't respond immediately. Instead, he walked slowly to the window and looked down. "People look like ants from up here." Armstrong turned his chair, intrigued by the boy's calmness. "You didn't answer my question." "I'm not a charlatan, Mr. Armstrong. I'm just someone who can help." The billionaire let out a dry laugh. "And how do you plan to do that? Will you pray for me? Lay hands on me? Sell some miracle potion?" Gabriel turned to face him. "I'm going to remind you of who you were before you forgot." The words hit Armstrong like a physical blow. His mocking smile disappeared. "Who sent you here? Was it one of my competitors? Some journalist?" "Nobody sent me," Gabriel replied. "I saw you needing help and came." Armstrong studied the boy more carefully. Simple clothes, worn sneakers, but a gaze that seemed to pierce through him. He detected no lies or malice in those brown eyes, just a disconcerting serenity. "Do you know who I am?" he asked, quieter. "A man who lost something important and thinks he can't get it back." Armstrong felt growing irritation. How dare this child speak to him like that? "Listen, kid, I don't know what game this is, but it's over. I'll have the security guard take you home and—" "You dream about mountains," Gabriel interrupted. "You dream you're climbing, but you always fall before reaching the top. You wake up sweating, trying to move your legs." The billionaire paled. He had never told anyone about those recurring nightmares. "How do you—" "I also know you keep a photo in your drawer. A woman with a small boy. You look at it when you're alone." Armstrong felt his throat tighten. The photo of his ex-wife and son, whom he hadn't seen in years. A secret no one in that building knew. "Who are you?" he whispered, his voice suddenly fragile. Gabriel approached the wheelchair and, to Armstrong's surprise, knelt beside him, looking directly into his eyes. "I'm someone who can see what others can't see. And I see that your legs aren't the only problem. Your heart is also paralyzed." The billionaire felt sudden rage replace the shock. "Get out of here," he ordered, his voice trembling. "Get out!" Gabriel didn't move. "If I can make you walk again, what would you give me in return?" The question caught Armstrong by surprise. "So that was it? Money?" "Of course it was money. It always was. How much do you want?" $1,000 for your wasted time?" Gabriel shook his head. "That's not it. 10,000? 100,000. Armstrong laughed bitterly. "How about $1 million? Is that what your promised miracle is worth?" $1 million. To his surprise, Gabriel smiled. $1 million sounds good?" Armstrong looked at the boy, incredulous, before letting out a laugh. It was absurd, but also intriguing. He had spent much more on experimental treatments that led nowhere. "All right, kid. Cure me, I'll give you $1 million. He made a dramatic pause. "But when you fail, I want you to tell the truth." "Who sent you here?" Gabriel extended his small hand. "Deal." Armstrong hesitated before shaking the boy's hand. He felt a strange warmth upon touching it, like a gentle electric current. "Prepare the check, Mr. Armstrong," Gabriel said with quiet confidence. "You'll need it soon." Through the intercom, Armstrong ordered the secretary not to disturb him under any circumstances. Then he locked the office door. He didn't want witnesses to the farce he was about to witness. Or perhaps, somewhere deep that he wouldn't admit even to himself, he didn't want witnesses in case something inexplicable really happened. "So, how do you plan to perform this miracle?" he asked, turning his chair to face Gabriel. The boy looked around the office, pausing at the framed diplomas. "You have many certificates. Do they all say it's impossible?" Armstrong followed the boy's gaze. "The world's best neurologists. Medical unanimity, irreversible spinal cord injury. Translating for your age, I'll never walk again." Gabriel walked to the desk and picked up one of the medical reports. Obviously, he couldn't understand the technical terms, but he leafed through the pages with interest. "They look at what's broken," he said finally, returning the document to the desk. "I look at what can still respond." Armstrong felt an involuntary shiver. "And how do you know what can still respond?" "I can see," Gabriel replied simply. "Like I can see the photo in your drawer, or the dreams about mountains." The billionaire swallowed hard. Was he really considering the words of a child? He, Robert Armstrong, the man who had built an empire based on data, science, and relentless logic? "What do you want me to do?" he asked, surprising himself. Gabriel approached. "Close your eyes." Armstrong hesitated but obeyed. He felt ridiculous, vulnerable. "Now remember when you could walk. Don't think about the chair or the accident. Think about how it felt to walk on the beach, climb stairs, feel the ground under your feet." Armstrong frowned but concentrated. He remembered his morning walks through Central Park, the weekend climbs he used to do, the sensation of running against the wind. "Now," Gabriel continued, "talk to your legs." "What?" Armstrong opened his eyes, irritated.
This is ridiculous. More ridiculous than a boy who knows your secrets.
The billionaire closed his mouth, speechless. He took a deep breath and closed his eyes again. What should I say? What you feel. What you want. Be honest. Armstrong felt absurdly embarrassed, but something compelled him to continue. I miss you, he murmured, feeling foolish. I miss walking, running, being whole. Continue, Gabriel encouraged. I'm tired of this chair. Tired of depending on others. Tired of being less than I was. As he spoke, Armstrong felt something strange. A light tingling, almost imperceptible, rising through his thighs. He ignored it, thinking it was his imagination. Tell them you need them, Gabriel instructed, placing a hand on Armstrong's shoulder. Tell them you believe. I need you, the billionaire repeated, his voice firmer. I want to believe I can walk again. The tingling intensified. Armstrong opened his eyes, startled. I'm feeling something, Gabriel smiled. Continue. This is impossible, Armstrong whispered. The spinal cord is severed. There's no neural connection. Stop thinking like a doctor, Gabriel said. Feel like a human. Armstrong closed his eyes again, focusing on the sensation. It was real. A tingling that now spread through both legs, down to his feet. Please, he whispered, and realized tears were streaming down his face. Please work again. Gabriel placed his hands on Armstrong's knees. Now try to move them. Don't just use your arms. Use everything. Anger, pain, hope. Armstrong took a deep breath and concentrated like never before. He channeled all the frustration accumulated in 5 years of immobility, all the anger from negative diagnoses, all the sadness of the life he had lost. And then it happened. His right foot moved. Just a few centimeters, but it moved. Armstrong opened his eyes, incredulous. He looked down and saw his foot in a different position. It wasn't a spasm. He had commanded the movement. My God, he whispered. Try again, Gabriel encouraged. With effort, Armstrong managed to move his left foot too. The movement was small, laborious, but real. Tears flowed freely now. How? He murmured, unable to complete the sentence. Gabriel smiled. Your body always knew how to walk. It just needed to believe again. Armstrong extended his trembling hands to the armrests of the chair and, with monumental effort, tried to stand up. His legs shook violently, barely supporting his weight, but for a brief moment, maybe 3 seconds, he stood, before falling back into the chair, exhausted. I stood up, he said, his voice choked. I stood up! Gabriel nodded. It's just the beginning. You'll need practice, physical therapy. But the path is open again. Armstrong looked at the boy with a mixture of astonishment and gratitude. How? How did you do this? I didn't do anything, Gabriel replied. You did. I just helped you remember that you could. The billionaire wiped the tears with the back of his hands, trying to regain composure. The check, he said suddenly. $1 million. I promised you. He opened the drawer and pulled out a checkbook. With his still trembling hand, he filled in the amount and signed. Here, he said, extending the paper. You really cured me. Gabriel looked at the check but didn't take it. You can keep the change, Armstrong frowned. What do you mean? I don't want your money, the boy replied. The real cure wasn't in your legs, it was in your heart. The billionaire remained silent, processing the words. I don't understand. You will, Gabriel said, walking to the door. Use your legs well when you walk completely again. And your heart too. Armstrong looked at the check in his hand and then at the boy. Wait, who are you really? How did you know about me? Gabriel smiled. Just someone who can see what others can't see. Goodbye, Mr. Armstrong. If this story is already moving you, go ahead and subscribe to the channel now. Here you'll find stories that inspire, move, and show how life can change in an instant. And before the billionaire could say anything else, Gabriel opened the door and left, leaving him alone with his trembling legs, his confused heart, and $1 million check that no one had wanted to accept. Sophia was exhausted after her 10-hour shift cleaning offices downtown. Her knees ached, her hands were rough from chemical products, and all she wanted was to get home, check if Lucas was better from the flu, and find out how Gabriel's mysterious encounter in Manhattan had gone. When she opened the apartment door, she found Mrs. Ramirez in the kitchen preparing a soup that perfumed the entire environment. How is Lucas? She asked immediately. Much better, the elderly neighbor replied with a smile. The fever completely broke. He even ate well at lunch, Sophia sighed with relief. And Gabriel, as he returned, he arrived 2 hours ago. He's quiet, reading to his brother in the room. Sophia thanked the neighbor, who said goodbye with a tight hug. Then she walked silently to the room and stopped at the door. The scene warmed her heart. Gabriel sitting on the edge of the mattress, reading a worn storybook, while Lucas listened attentively, his eyes shining. Mommy, Lucas exclaimed upon seeing her, extending his arms. Sophia entered and hugged her youngest son, checking his forehead. Indeed, there was no longer any sign of fever. "How are you feeling, my little one?" "Better," Lucas replied. "Gabriel said I would get better today, and I did." Sophia looked at her older son, who smiled shyly. "Is that so?" Gabriel nodded. "I knew he would get better, like I knew I needed to go to the city today." Sophia sat beside her children. "And how was it?" "Did you find the person who needed help?" "Yes," Gabriel replied simply. "And were you able to help?" The boy remained silent for a moment. "I think so. At least I started to help." Sophia observed her son with curiosity. There was something different about him. A calmness, a maturity that seemed to have intensified. "Gabriel, what really happened today?" The boy closed the book and looked at his mother. "I met a very rich and very sad man. He hadn't been able to walk for 5 years. He thought he never would again." Sophia's eyes widened. And today he stood up for a few seconds." The mother was speechless. She knew Gabriel had a special sensitivity, but this... How? Gabriel shrugged. "I just helped him remember that he could. Sometimes people forget what they're capable of." Sophia hugged her son, feeling a mixture of pride and concern. "You're special, Gabriel." "I've always known. We all are, Mom. Some just forget." She smiled, stroking the boy's hair. "And this rich man? Was he grateful? He wanted to give me money. $1 million. Sophia laughed, thinking it was a joke. "Of course, and you refused, didn't you?" Gabriel nodded seriously. "That wasn't what he needed to give, and that wasn't what we needed to receive." The mother looked at her son, realizing he wasn't joking. She felt a shiver run down her spine. "Gabriel, who was this man?" "Robert Armstrong." Sophia froze. Everyone in New York knew that name. The ruthless billionaire, owner of half the city. The man who, according to the newspapers, had no heart. You really met Robert Armstrong today?" Gabriel confirmed with his head. "He's going to change, Mom. He'll use his power for good things now." Sophia didn't know what to say. Part of her wanted to believe it was just childhood imagination, but she knew Gabriel's look too well when he really saw something. "How can you be sure?" "Because he remembered how to feel," Gabriel replied. "And when you remember how to feel, you can't make others suffer anymore." Sophia hugged both children against her chest, thinking about the strange day that was ending, about what had really happened in that office in Manhattan, and about what the future held for them. "I'm proud of you," she said to Gabriel. "Not for what you did, but for who you are." The boy smiled and opened the book again. "Can I finish the story for Lucas to sleep?" Sophia nodded and stood up. At the door, she turned to observe her children once more. She had the strange feeling that something had fundamentally changed that day, as if a door had been opened, not just for Robert Armstrong, but for all of them. 2 weeks passed since the encounter with Gabriel. Robert Armstrong was sitting in his wheelchair contemplating the city through the office window when his phone rang. "Mr. Armstrong? Dr. Lowell is here for the appointment." "Send him in," he replied, turning the chair. The neurologist, a middle-aged man with gray hair and wire-rimmed glasses, entered the office carrying a briefcase. He and Armstrong had known each other for years, since the accident that left the billionaire paralyzed. "Robert," the doctor greeted formally. "How have you been feeling?" Armstrong hesitated before answering. He hadn't told anyone about what had happened with Gabriel. Not about the exercises he practiced secretly every night, trying to reproduce those brief moments when his legs had responded. "I have something to show you, Charles," he said finally. The doctor raised his eyebrows, intrigued. Armstrong took a deep breath, positioned the chair a meter from the window, and, to Dr. Lowell's amazement, began to stand up. With visible effort, trembling but determined, Armstrong stood up. 1, 2, 3 seconds, 5, 10. Then, with unsteady but unmistakable steps, he took 2 steps toward the window before grabbing onto the windowsill. Exhausted, Dr. Lowell dropped the briefcase he was holding, documents scattering across the floor. "My God," he murmured. This is impossible." Armstrong smiled, proud but also vulnerable in a way he had never shown before. "Apparently not. How?" the doctor asked, approaching quickly to help him back to the chair. "We tried all known treatments. The injury was complete, the spinal cord. Let's say I found an unconventional specialist," Armstrong replied, refusing help and returning alone, slowly to the chair. Dr. Lowell seemed in shock. "I need to examine you immediately. Do new tests, MRIs. This contradicts everything we know about complete spinal injuries." Armstrong nodded. "Do whatever is necessary. But first, I need you to recommend the best physical therapist in the country. I want to accelerate this process." While the doctor collected his papers, still babbling about medical miracles and unprecedented cases, Armstrong looked again at the city below. Somewhere, among those millions of people, was a boy who had seen beyond his physical condition. beyond his wealth, beyond his bitterness. A boy who had refused $1 million because he knew the real exchange was something else. "Charles," he called, interrupting the doctor. "Do you know any charity institutions focused on children from the Bronx?" The doctor seemed confused by the change of subject. "Well, there are several." "Why?" Armstrong smiled. "Because I think I found a cause to support." In the small Bronx apartment, the routine continued. Sophia prepared breakfast while Gabriel arranged the backpacks for school. Lucas, completely recovered from the flu, played with a worn plastic car. "Mom, we're going to be late," Gabriel reminded, always attentive to the clock. Sophia sighed. The heater had broken again, and money was tight for repairs. Winter was approaching, and she worried about the children in the cold. "I'm almost done," she replied, wrapping the sandwiches in reused aluminum foil. The doorbell rang, surprising everyone. Visits were rare, especially at that hour of the morning. "Who could it be?" Sophia murmured, drying her hands on her apron before answering. A man in a suit waited in the hallway. Tall, serious-looking, holding a leather briefcase under his arm. "Mrs. Morales?" he asked formally. Sophia nodded, cautious. "Yes? My name is Richard Palmer, lawyer for Mr. Robert Armstrong." Sophia's heart accelerated. Armstrong, the man Gabriel had visited. She suddenly felt fear. Could they be accusing her son of something? "What do you want?" she asked, positioning herself protectively at the door. "Mr. Armstrong requests a meeting with you and your son, Gabriel." "I have authorization to take you to him, if convenient," Sophia frowned. "My children need to go to school. I have to work. Mr. Armstrong understands your commitments and is willing to compensate any financial inconvenience," the lawyer replied politely. "I assure you it's a matter of extreme importance and benefit to your family." Gabriel appeared beside his mother. "Can we go, Mom? I want to see how he is." Sophia hesitated, looking at her son. "Gabriel, do you know this man?" "No, but I know we can trust him. Mr. Armstrong is different now." The lawyer observed the boy with curiosity. "Gabriel Morales, I presume?" The boy nodded. "Mr. Armstrong speaks highly of you," Palmer commented with a slight smile. "He said you have a special gift." Sophia looked from the lawyer to her son, still undecided. "We can't just skip work and school without explanation. If I may," Palmer intervened, opening the briefcase. "I have here a letter for the school, explaining the situation, and another for your employer. Mr. Armstrong will take full responsibility for any inconvenience." Sophia took the letters, surprised by the foresight and efficiency. They were printed on Armstrong Industries' letterhead, signed by the billionaire himself. "Please, Mrs. Morales," Palmer insisted. "I can guarantee this meeting will change your family's life, for the better." Gabriel held his mother's hand. "Let's go, Mom. It's important." Something in her son's conviction, in the lawyer's formality, and perhaps in her own instinct, made Sophia finally nod. "I need to take Lucas too." "I have no one to leave him with." "Certainly," Palmer agreed. "A limousine awaits us downstairs." Lucas's eyes widened. "A real limousine?" Sophia smiled nervously, grabbing her worn coat. "I think so, son." As they descended the stairs of the old building, Gabriel held his mother's hand firmly. "Everything will be fine," he whispered. He remembered how to The limousine crossed Manhattan toward New York Presbyterian Medical Center. Sophia watched through the window, trying to hide her nervousness. Lucas was enchanted with the leather seats and the built-in television, while Gabriel remained calm, as if that extraordinary situation was perfectly normal. "Why are we going to a hospital?" Sophia asked the lawyer. "Mr. Armstrong is in intensive physical therapy treatment," Palmer explained. "He prefers to receive you there, if you don't mind." When they arrived, they were led not through the main entrance, but through a private access. In the elevator, they went up to the top floor, where an entire corridor seemed reserved. Doctors and nurses greeted Palmer with deference. "This way," he indicated, stopping in front of double doors. "Mr. Armstrong is anxious to see you." The room was spacious and bright, with large windows and advanced medical equipment. In the center, wearing sports clothes instead of his usual suit, Robert Armstrong was walking slowly between parallel bars, supported by two physical therapists. His steps were hesitant, laborious but real. When he saw the visitors, his face lit up with a smile that Sophia could never have imagined seeing on that man, whose reputation for coldness was legendary. "Gabriel," Armstrong called, gesturing for the therapists to step away. Supporting himself on the bars, he took 3 more steps alone. "Look, I'm walking." The boy smiled, as if he had always known this would happen. "You practiced a lot." Armstrong laughed, a genuine sound that surprised even Palmer. "Day and night. The doctors say it's a miracle. Science can't explain it." He looked at Sophia and Lucas. "You must be this extraordinary boy's mother." Sophia nodded, still stunned by the scene. "Sophia Morales." "And this is Lucas, My youngest son. Armstrong gestured, and one of the therapists brought a wheelchair. He sat down explaining, I still can't stand for very long, but I improve a little more each day. He looked at Gabriel. Thanks to you. You did the hard work, the boy replied. Armstrong smiled again, then his expression became more serious. Mrs. Morales, I invited you here because I have a proposal. Your son changed my life in ways that go beyond these legs that are starting to work again. Sophia waited, apprehensive. I spent the last 2 weeks reflecting on many things, Armstrong continued. About how I used my power and my wealth. About who I became after the accident. He paused. And about the $1 million check your son refused. Sophia turned to Gabriel, shocked. You really refused? The boy shrugged. That wasn't what he needed to give. Armstrong nodded. Exactly. And now I understand what I needed to give. He gestured to Palmer, who handed him a folder. I established a foundation. It's called Second Chances. It will finance experimental treatments for people with injuries considered irreversible. People who, like me, were sentenced to never walk again, but who maybe just need to remember they can. Sophia listened attentively, still not understanding what this had to do with her family. The foundation will also support low-income families in the Bronx, Armstrong continued. Starting with yours. He opened the folder and extended a document. This is the deed to an apartment in Brooklyn. 3 bedrooms, near an excellent public school. It's in your name, Mrs. Morales. No mortgages, no conditions. Sophia took the document with trembling hands. I can't accept something like this. You can and you must, Armstrong insisted. There's also an educational fund for Gabriel and Lucas. Guaranteed university for both when the time comes. Lucas tugged at his mother's sleeve. Are we going to have a new house, Mommy? Sophia couldn't respond, tears streaming down her face. Armstrong continued. And a job, if you wish. In the Foundation's administration. Competitive salary, complete health plan, flexible hours to take care of the boys. Why? Sophia finally managed to ask. Why all this? Armstrong looked at Gabriel, then back at her. Because your son taught me that the real cure wasn't in my legs, but in my heart. And a healed heart can't continue causing pain to others. He paused. Consider that I'm keeping the change, as Gabriel suggested. Sophia hugged her children, trying to process how their lives had just completely changed. There's one more thing, Armstrong added, seeming almost shy, an expression never before associated with him. I'd like to invite Gabriel for regular visits. Not just because I still need his guidance for my physical recovery, but because he hesitated. Because he reminds me that genuine goodness exists in the world. If you agree, of course. Gabriel looked at his mother, who nodded, still speechless. We can start today, Armstrong proposed. I have a physical therapy session now. Gabriel could stay, while Palmer takes you and Lucas to see the new apartment. Then we'll meet for lunch. I know an excellent Italian restaurant that serves the best ice cream in the city. Ice cream! Lucas exclaimed, enthusiastic. Sophia laughed through tears, feeling as if an enormous weight had been removed from her shoulders. Thank you, she said simply. Thank you, Armstrong shook his head. I'm the one who thanks you. For sharing your extraordinary son with me, even if just for a day. He saved more than my legs. While Sophia and Lucas followed Palmer to see their new home, Gabriel stayed with Armstrong. When they were alone, the billionaire asked, How did you know? How did you know I could walk again when the world's best doctor said it was impossible? Gabriel smiled. Because I saw the man you could be if you remembered how to feel. And that man wasn't born to sit down. Armstrong felt his eyes well up. You know I hired detectives to investigate you? I expected to find some trick, some fraud. And what did they find? Nothing beyond an extraordinary boy from a humble family. A boy who, according to neighbors and teachers, always knew things he shouldn't know. Always helped people without asking anything in return. Gabriel shrugged. It's what anyone would do. No, Armstrong disagreed, shaking his head. It's not, and that's the most important lesson you taught me. The physical therapist entered, announcing it was time for the session. Armstrong extended his hand to Gabriel, who held it firmly. Ready for a few more steps? The boy asked. Armstrong smiled. More than ready. I have a lot of ground to cover, and many people to help stand up too. 6 months passed. Winter gave way to spring, and with it, a series of transformations. The Morales family was unrecognizable. In the spacious Brooklyn apartment, with large windows that let in the morning sun, Sophia prepared coffee in a modern, ample kitchen. Lucas played in the living room, surrounded by toys he had only seen in television commercials before. Gabriel, sitting at the table, quietly read a book about medicine, his new interest. The phone rang. It was Palmer, the lawyer who now worked directly with Sophia at the Second Chances Foundation. Good morning, Sophia. Mr. Armstrong confirmed the ceremony for 2 o'clock. The press will be present. Are you and the boys ready? We'll be there, she replied, smiling. Gabriel is especially anxious. When she hung up, she turned to her older son. Nervous? Gabriel shook his head. No, he deserves this moment. Sophia sat beside her son. In recent months, she had learned to accept Gabriel's special gift. The visions, as she called them, continued happening. Small guidances, deep intuitions, knowledge that appeared from nowhere. The boy had helped several foundation patients, though no case as dramatic as Armstrong's. You always knew he would walk again, didn't you? Sophia asked. I knew he could choose to walk, Gabriel corrected. Choices are important. Sophia hugged her son. You changed our lives. We changed our lives, Gabriel replied, wise beyond his years. And now we can help others change theirs. The auditorium at Presbyterian Hospital was packed. Journalists, doctors, patients, and their families all gathered for the official launch of the Second Chances Foundation and the inauguration of the new rehabilitation wing, entirely financed by Robert Armstrong. Backstage, Armstrong adjusted his tie. He used a cane for support, but he was standing firm. Doctors called his recovery unprecedented and revolutionary. Scientific articles were being written about his case. Are you ready? Gabriel asked, entering the room. Armstrong smiled, seeing the boy. I never thought I'd be here like this, standing, about to do something that really matters. You were always destined to do important things, Gabriel replied. You just needed to find the truly important ones. The billionaire nodded, thoughtful. You know what I discovered these months? That there are others like you, people with inexplicable gifts, children who see beyond the limitations that adults impose on the world. There are many different gifts, Gabriel agreed. Some just need to be discovered. Armstrong looked through the curtain at the audience waiting. Among them, former employees he had unjustly fired and who now worked at the foundation. The old gardener who had stepped on the grass, now manager of therapeutic gardening projects. Former business rivals who, surprised by his transformation, became partners in humanitarian causes. It's time, an assistant announced. Armstrong took a deep breath. Shall we? Gabriel extended his hand. Together they walked to the stage. The billionaire who had relearned to walk, and the boy who had seen beyond appearances. When Armstrong stepped up to the podium, without a wheelchair, using only the cane for support, the audience erupted in applause. Cameras flashed, recording the historic moment. Good afternoon, he began. Many of you knew me as a different man. A man who measured value in dollars and success in acquisitions. A man who, when he lost the ability to walk, also lost the ability to feel. He paused, looking at Gabriel in the front row, beside his mother and brother. Then, 6 months ago, I received an unusual visit. An 8-year-old boy entered my office and said he could cure me. I, of course, laughed. I offered $1 million, certain it was another attempt to take advantage of my condition. Armstrong smiled at the memory. But this boy didn't want my money. He wanted something much more valuable. He wanted to remind me of who I was before I forgot, before I allowed bitterness to harden my heart. The room was in absolute silence. What happened that day defies medical explanations. My doctors call it a miracle. Scientists seek complex neurological theories, but I call it a reminder. A reminder that sometimes we need to look beyond diagnoses, beyond probabilities, beyond the limitations we accept as absolute truths. Armstrong pointed to the large plaque that would be unveiled, revealing the name of the new wing. It's with immense pride that I inaugurate today the Gabriel Morales Advanced Neurological Rehabilitation Wing, a space where science meets hope, where diagnoses aren't sentences, and where each patient will be treated not just for their physical limitations, but for their complete human potential. As the plaque was revealed, showing Gabriel's name in golden letters, Armstrong continued, The Second Chances Foundation is officially born today, but it began the moment a boy looked at me and said, They look at what's broken. I look at what can still respond. This will be our philosophy. This will be our commitment. The applause was deafening. Tears streamed down the faces of many present, especially patients in wheelchairs who saw, for the first time in a long time, a spark of hope. And for all who faced difficult diagnoses, for those who were told impossible, for families struggling against poverty in the Bronx or anywhere, our message is simple. There may be a path that science hasn't mapped yet. There may be a force that money can't buy. And there will always be hope, as long as there are people willing to see beyond apparent limitations. Armstrong gestured for Gabriel to come up on stage. The boy, shy but serene, joined him under warm applause. This boy taught me that the real cure wasn't in my legs, but in my heart. And today I extend that lesson to all of you. Because sometimes the greatest miracle isn't walking again. It's remembering how to feel. Armstrong hugged Gabriel. A moment captured by dozens of cameras that would appear on newspaper front pages the next day. The billionaire and the boy. The power of wealth and the power of faith. Science and the inexplicable. United in an embrace that symbolized the bridge between seemingly distant worlds. Later, away from cameras and crowds, Armstrong and Gabriel walked slowly through the hospital corridors visiting patients. In each room, the billionaire introduced himself not as the powerful magnate, but as someone who understood pain, fear, and now, hope. "Thank you," he said to Gabriel, when they were alone for a moment. "Not just for helping my legs remember how to walk, but for helping my heart remember how to feel," Gabriel smiled. "Everyone forgets sometimes. The important thing is having someone to remind us." Armstrong leaned on his cane, looking through the window at the city he once saw only as properties and business opportunities, but now saw as an ocean of lives, each with its own journey. "You know what still intrigues me?" he asked. "Why me? Why among so many people suffering did you come to me?" Gabriel was silent for a moment, thoughtful. "Because sometimes, to help many, you need to start by changing one. Especially if that one has the power to change many others." Armstrong nodded, understanding the wisdom in the simple words. "And what comes next? What else do you see for us?" The boy looked at Manhattan's horizon, the skyscrapers shining under the afternoon sun. "I see many steps. Some yours, some from other people who still can't walk, but will remember. I see bridges being built between the possible and the impossible." Armstrong placed his hand on the boy's shoulder. "And for you? What future do you see for yourself?" Gabriel smiled. "One where I'll continue reminding people of what they're capable of. Sometimes with words, sometimes just by being there. A doctor, perhaps?" Armstrong suggested, noticing the boy's growing interest in medicine. "Maybe. Or just someone who sees what others can't see." Armstrong felt a wave of gratitude so intense he almost lost his balance. This boy, who could have asked for anything in return for the miracle, had only asked that he remember who he really was, had only asked that he use his power for good. "Cure me. I'll give you $1 million, Armstrong murmured, remembering his arrogant words from that first encounter. Gabriel smiled. "You can keep the change." And with those simple words, they continued their walk through the hospital corridors. The billionaire who had relearned to walk, and the boy who saw beyond appearances. Two worlds that should never have met, united by a simple reminder. Sometimes, the greatest cure isn't in the body, but in the heart. And the greatest miracle isn't doing the impossible, but remembering that the impossible is just what we haven't learned to see differently yet. 3 years later, the Brooklyn apartment had become a true home. Photos on the walls showed happy moments. Lucas winning a swimming championship, Sophia receiving an award for her work at the foundation, Gabriel beside Armstrong at international conferences on innovative treatments. Sophia was finishing preparing a cake when the doorbell rang. She opened the door to find a middle-aged woman, her face marked by exhaustion and worry, holding the hand of a girl of approximately 6 years old in a wheelchair. "Mrs. Morales?" the woman asked nervously. "My name is Eleanor Jenkins. This is my daughter, Lily. We were told that your son could..." Sophia smiled gently. "Please come in. Gabriel is waiting for you." The woman seemed surprised. "How did he know we were coming?" "I couldn't make an appointment. We just showed up." "Gabriel has a way of knowing these things," Sophia replied, leading them to the living room. Gabriel, now 11 years old, was sitting by the window. When the visitors entered, he smiled as if meeting old friends. "Hello, Lily," he greeted, approaching the girl in the wheelchair. "I was waiting for you." The girl, shy but curious, looked at the boy. "Can you help me walk again?" Gabriel knelt beside her, looking into her eyes with the same serenity he had shown in Armstrong's office years before. "I'll help you remember that you can," he replied simply. Eleanor looked at Sophia, confused and hopeful. Sophia just nodded, recognizing the same scene that had repeated dozens of times in recent years. The beginning of another journey, another second chance. Through the open window, the sound of the city entered like a distant symphony. While Gabriel spoke softly with Lily, Sophia watched, marveled by the son destiny had given her. A boy who had transformed pain into purpose, who had seen possibilities where others saw only endings, and who continued, day after day, reminding the world that the greatest cure always begins from within. And in his office at the Second Chances Foundation, Robert Armstrong walked without a cane for the first time, dictating terms for another rehabilitation center, another hope for those who had been told impossible. On his desk, a small bronze plaque with the words that had changed his life. "Cure me. I'll give you $1 million. You can keep the change. If this story touched your heart, leave your like and share it with someone special." And comment below where you're watching from. It's always exciting to see how far our stories reach.